Legendary Ball Knower here, and I'm back to talk to you about 5 players that I can't stop drafting, fast drafting in the Rabbit Contest. So if you don't know what the Rabbit Contest is, it's a 15-person roster, best ball format, hosted on Fast Draft, and it's 68% full. And I've done several drafts, and now I'm here to talk to you about my favorite players in several different points of the draft. So we're going to go early, a little bit later, and then 2 deep sleepers guaranteed to blow your socks off, or they don't blow your socks off. You thought I was going to say something free? Not a chance. So here we are. This is another Ball Knower briefing with the legendary Ball Knower. So let's get into it. So Derrick Henry going off the board, 5th pick of the 2nd round, right in between Brock Bowers and Drake London. So why Derrick Henry, you ask? Derrick Henry is one of the safest picks inside of that top 20 picks. Does he catch passes? No, that's not what he does. You know what he does? He breaks long runs, and he's in one of the most efficient rushing offenses, with Lamar Jackson being the catalyst that allowed him to average a career high 5.8 yards a carry in 2024. So we're talking about a guy who was 79 yards away from reaching 2,000 yards, becoming the only running back in NFL history to rush for 2,000 yards on multiple occasions. If you recall, in 2020, he rushed for over 2,000 yards as a Tennessee Titan. RIP. Wish you the best, though. And now we're talking about him with a generational talent, a truly generational talent, not the way that we use generational, all gross and overused, but a truly special quarterback that allows for him to open up running lanes that he's never had access to before, along with a stout defense that's going to have them playing from ahead. So positive game script favors Mr. Henry. I'm taking the safety and certainty of him over Brock Bowers and Drake London. Although it's not an easy click, that's just kind of where we are. So moving on to my next player that I can't stop drafting, it's going to be Tetairoa McMillan. Don't call him Tet. And he's going off the board, 2nd pick of the 4th round, and he's going right in between Omarion Hampton and Alvin Kamara. Now, does that feel good to take a player who's never played an NFL snap over a guy who might be in the Hall of Fame one day in Alvin Kamara? Absolutely not. However, I believe that this Panthers offense is one of the cheapest stacks that you could buy in this format. And so I'm really excited to be able to grab a guy like Tetairoa McMillan. I almost made the mistake again of calling him Tet, right in between Omarion and Hampton, who, I mean, obviously we know now we need to see what's going on with Najee Harris and his eye. And so we might have him on the physically unable to perform list, allowing Omarion Hampton to get off to a faster start. I was of the belief that Omarion Hampton would not be able to just completely usurp Najee Harris. But if he has that backfield to himself and the Chargers coaching staff sees what we've all seen, he might be in for 330 touches as a rookie. But we don't have that information right now. So I'm taking Tetairoa McMillan. See, I just did it again. Man. Look, nobody's perfect. So Tetairoa McMillan, 2nd pick, 4th round, in between Alvin Kamara and Omarion Hampton. I'm clicking the button on Tetairoa McMillan. I think he's a lock for at least 130 targets, and he's going to be the best weapon that Bryce Young has to throw to so far in his career. And I don't think it's that close. I think that Adam Thielen will occupy the slot. There's going to be opportunities for Xavier Legette to build on a somewhat disappointing rookie year and Jalen Coker to continue to break out. But I think Tetairoa McMillan is the day one target leader in that offense. And if I'm wrong, then I've just burned a 4th round pick in the Rabbit Fast Draft Contest. Again, that is what we're talking about. 68% full. So if you haven't done a draft yet, please get in there and do that now. So moving on, I'm moving on to one of his teammates. Spoiler alert. I'm going with Chuba Hubbard, going off the board, 3rd pick of the 5th round. He's right in between DK Metcalf and Devonta Smith. Now, this is a volume play to me, but it also has tremendous upside. So Chuba Hubbard handled 80% of the carries inside the 5 for Carolina. I don't think that changes even with the addition of Rico Dowdle going into the 2025 season. This is as secure of a workhorse, in my opinion, as we have in the game. And he's cheaper than every other workhorse that we have in the game. So he handled 295 opportunities last year, 253 carries, 42 receptions, in 15 games, came in at just under 16 points a game, if I'm not mistaken. And so this is a guy to me that I believe could be an inflection point player, a guy who makes or breaks your roster, and he's available at the fifth pick, the third pick of the fifth round. So I'm really excited for what he's going to be able to do and what seems to be a much more functional offense other than the bottom dwellers that they showed themselves to be early on in the year. The Bama Bryce flashes, he averaged 21.8 points a game. A rising tide lifts all boats. So I'm really excited about this Carolina offense because of the fact that they're so cheap and you can get all of them for cheap. So I'm not going to back off of my decision to press the button on Chuba Hubbard over Devonta Smith and DK Metcalf at this current juncture in time. I will not be accepting any further questions. I'm kidding. But moving on, we're going way, way later in the draft here, boys and girls, cool cats and kittens. And I'm going to go with a player that if you've watched any of my content over the course of the last 6 months, you've seen how bullish I am on the Packers tight end. Now, I think he's on the verge of making history this year. So he had 65 targets, 50 receptions, 707 yards, and 7 touchdowns last year in his sophomore or second year campaign. He was drafted behind Luke Musgrave, and all he's done is just outperform him at every step of the way. And we saw going into the offseason, his head coach, who's also the play caller, alluding to what could grow into a Travis Kelce or a George Kittle-esque role for Tucker Kraft. So Tucker Kraft is going off the board the first pick of the 12th round, pick 120. He's going right in between Trey Harris and Trevor Lawrence. So that makes me all the more confident on taking a flyer on a guy like Tucker Kraft, who I believe is going to break out in a George Kittle-esque way. So he had 700 yards on what, Player Profiler says 70 targets, Fantasy Points Data says 65. Either way, it's very limited volume to put up 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. The touchdowns, they aren't sticky, but he's good at scoring touchdowns, so that number could repeat itself. And if we get a bump in targets to just say 90 targets, we could be looking at the third tight end, George Kittle is the other two, to finish with 1,000 yards on less than 100 targets. So really excited to be able to click the button on Tucker Kraft at this point in time in the rabbit drafts. And I look forward to doing it again. Now, moving on. Now, this is a guy that you've also seen me talking about in the Dynasty streets. Now, I know we're not allowed to talk about third-year breakouts anymore. Statistically, it's not a thing. Just put your spreadsheet away for a minute and just hear me out, okay? So we're talking about a guy in a gross offense that nobody wants, that already has a guy who broke out, and he's not going, we don't know who's playing quarterback and this, that, and the third, and he's just not going to be able to command any sort of meaningful target share. I'm here to pump the brakes on that. Okay. So we saw this guy break out early in his first opportunity as a full-time player. As soon as Amari Cooper got traded, this guy was lights out. So he's the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy from week 7 and 9. Over a 5-week span before a concussion ended his season, he was commanding about 9 targets a game, and he was dominant in those shares. Even in Jerry Jeudy's infamous breakout game in the Superdome versus the Saints, Cedric Tillman still commanded 8 targets that game. Now, did it work out well? No, but you can go back and watch the targets for yourself on the NFL Pro or however you watch this to refute what I'm saying. He still got 8 targets. This was not the Jerry Jeudy breakout happened in part because of the fact that Cedric Tillman wasn't available. And so now you've got Jerry Jeudy, who's much more expensive, and we're looking at that as, okay, that's the number 1 target, bona fide. But I just want to present to you, what if it's not? What if it's not? What if it's the guy that's 6'3" and 215 pounds and lines up as a true outside X receiver, and then you've got more of a 1A, 1B situation than just one guy being a target hog and the other guy getting what's left over. Cedric Tillman displayed to me the tools to be an absolute league winner, another inflection point player, a guy who can make or break your ability to win the first place prize in the Rabbit Fast Draft, which is $10,000. So fade him at your own risk. I mean, in the 14th round, he's going right in between Michael Penix and Ramondre Stevenson. And I think that he has a chance to massively outperform this ADP. So I'm clicking the button whether or not you agree with me on Cedric Tillman. Hopefully you do. Hopefully we make some money together. This has been another Ball Knower briefing. I'm the legendary Ball Knower. And always remember, there's ball watchers and there's ball knowers. Assign yourselves accordingly. Have a good night, everybody.